Welcome back to another GTN Coach's Corner. We answer all your training related questions. In this week's show, heart rate max tests and heart rate zones, training through illness, another zone 2 question, a less than ideal brick session setup and how to deal with it, and tools for race day. Let's get started. Alright, our first question today is from Automotive, and it's quite a long one. GTN Coach's Corner, heart rate zones. I'm a 46-year-old man. My resting heart rate is about 55, and my maximum heart rate on the bike in a ramp test was about 155. My first question is that a good indicator of maximum heart rate, or do I need a better, more specific test? Depends how you did the ramp test, I suppose. Then the second bigger question, Zwift and my Hawaii watch seem to agree that on what my heart rate training zone should be, but not my actual heart rate. While on FTP or threshold, I'll be around 145 beats per minute, sweet spot or tempo around 135, and endurance will be below 120 something. I can go for 2 hours at that pace and not feel tired. So my zones seem to be all squished, above what the common formulas tell you. Is that an indicator of poor base training? I'm recently back from a hiatus of 4 months, but before that and since, I've been pretty consistent with about 3.5 weeks. Now my goal is to build up my FTP training for a couple of years, but do I have to do more shudder zone 2 training? Okay, first, that max heart rate test in a ramp test. You can find your max heart rate in a ramp test, but you have to get to that max pretty quickly. I'm talking like 6 to 8 minutes. The ramp has to be pretty aggressive. If you've just done this as a kind of FTP ramp test or a lactate threshold ramp test where you did 3 minutes at each zone and you lifted it up slowly, chances are you got too fatigued before you got to that max heart rate and you're not actually measuring your max heart rate. Your muscles are too fatigued to push hard enough at the end of that to get you to max heart rate. To do a max heart rate test, you need to ramp that up really quickly. You need to actually, every minute or so, you need to ramp up the effort, and so that you are really working hard. Alternatively, what you can do is a 10-minute max effort, so a 10-minute time trial, and then the last 30 to 60 seconds, you actually sprint as hard as you can go, empty the tank, and the heart rate you hit there will be closer to your actual maximum heart rate. I have a feeling you didn't quite get to your maximum heart rate in that ramp test, and that is why your zones are all a little bit squished. If your maximum heart rate was 155 and your threshold was 145, that means you're holding your threshold at around 93% of your maximum, which is very impressive. That will make you some kind of endurance machine, because keeping your threshold that close to your maximum means you are extremely well adapted to your endurance sport. You can essentially hold an extremely high level for a long time, which is impressive. I think it's more likely explanation, no offense, that your heart rate maximum is a little bit higher than what you've measured. If you do go and test it and change those zones a little bit, you may find that they spread out a little bit more. Your maximum is a little bit higher than 155, and your zones feel a little bit more accurate, a little bit more comfortable. Having said that, if your heart rate is getting up really quickly, if you are starting training and you just have to push on, you can't do just long, easy stuff, then there is a chance that you do actually, I'm afraid to say, have to do a little bit more zone 2 training, a little bit more low aerobic training, and get that aerobic base a little bit more substantial, a little bit higher, so that you can spend more time at that zone 2 and you don't do all your training in zone 3 and zone 4 or even above your threshold. You need to be doing a fair amount of training just in that low aerobic zone. So make sure you're doing that too, sorry to say. Okay, Vartan Indejant asks, GTN Coach's Corner, I'm a proud dad of an 11-month-old girl, but with daycare starting, I see a lot of coughing and flu-like symptoms in my future. What is your advice or rules of thumb on how to deal with mild to strong illnesses in the middle of a training block for a race? Especially curious about what best practices are on peak week or race week. Don't think it would matter, but for context, I've been liking the routine of having one Target Olympic triathlon in the spring and one half marathon in the winter. Okay, well, I've been there. I'm actually still there. My kids are still at nursery, and I feel you. Yep, they bring home all kinds of germs. When it comes to illness and training, the simple answer is you have to rest. Illness is, by definition, your body being overwhelmed by a virus that your immune system cannot quite deal with without giving it more resources, and so it doesn't allow you to go out there and you get symptoms and you need to rest. That is the simple answer. Now, you don't have to completely rest. It doesn't mean complete stop training, particularly if your symptoms are only above your neck. If your head cold, headache, you can keep going as long as it's low aerobic. However, if your symptoms are below your neck, if you got full body aches, if it's in your chest, if you can't breathe, if you're congested, then I would suggest that you do actually have to rest. Give your body all the energy it can to fight that illness so that you can get back to training quicker. It is simply not worth the risk of either extending that illness or even worse, straining your heart muscles by training when you are ill. So take the rest. It is a bitter pill to swallow normally, to lose fitness to illness right when you're in the middle of your season. But if you can keep ticking over just a little bit and you can get back to it as quickly as possible by resting as aggressively as possible, if you can rest aggressively, you will actually not lose as much as you think you might, and you'll be back to training pretty quickly. So do the smart thing, rest. Don't start back too quickly. A lot of people tend to, right, I'm no longer sick and I've got some catching up to do, and they jump into really hard training, and what they find is 2 or 3 days later they're completely exhausted and they're back to having more rest. That's not the way to do it. Build up slowly again when you do come back from illness. Make sure your body is completely over the illness, and also give it a chance to get back into the routine of training before you start smashing yourself. Okay, Massimo asks, hashtag GTN Coaches Corner. Here's what I don't understand about zone 2. My understanding is that your body remetabolizes lactate into glycogen, but over your lactate threshold, you produce an excess of lactate, which makes you tired and sore. So why would someone need to take extra carbs when doing zone 2 training if they're burning fat that is remetabolized into glycogen to be reused? Zone 2, over lactate threshold, eating carbs, fat metabolism. Whoa, my head hurts. I think I'm going to have to read that again. Okay, to answer your main question, I think your main question there is you don't have to eat carbs to train in zone 2. In zone 2, you're going at a low enough intensity with enough oxygen available to your muscles that you can provide all the energy you require from fat metabolism, and therefore you don't need to eat. You can actually keep going in a fasted state if you're only in zone 2. That's not actually a problem. The caveat to that is that if you're training for something that is not in zone 2 at higher zones, you may want to train your body to use fuels from your gut, from your stomach, at the same time that it's metabolizing fat, because you can't provide all of the energy that you require to race higher than zone 2 from fat metabolism. So therefore on race day you do need to provide some fuel from your stomach and the fuel from your fat metabolism at the same time, and the way to do that is to teach your body to absorb from your gut while you're exercising, and the way to do that is to eat while you're doing zone 2 work. So that is one reason why you might want to eat. The other thing is a psychological factor, sort of psychological. It's kind of genetic, or your body's hardwiring, your biomechanics. Your body will be very, very conservative on how much energy it gives you. And when it sees you're running or biking as a trivial pursuit, it just won't let you go into that red where you are down to your last reserves of energy and you are burning your last reserves of fat as it sees it. Obviously, you've always got a lot more than you think you have. So your body will just not release that energy, and you will get slower and slower, and you'll feel more and more tired. And even though there is energy there, you could potentially keep going for a few days on the fat that is in your body. Your body will start seeing you dipping into those reserves, and it'll go, whoa, we don't need to be doing this, slow down. And the way to trick it is to get some carbs in. If your body thinks that there are carbs available, if there is replenishment available, it will be more likely to release more energy from your reserves and allow you to go longer and further. And therefore, taking even a small amount of carbs in can trick your body into releasing more of its reserves and get you to go longer and further. So that is another reason why you should perhaps take something in. In fact, studies have shown that even if you drink a sweet drink that your body thinks has carbs, even if it has 0 carbs, if it's just a sweetener, your body will still release more energy reserves because it thinks that it is getting some calories. So bear that in mind when you're out there and training. You might want to do zone 2 work and you might want to only metabolize fat, but your body might just not let you do that if it thinks it's going into danger territory as far as eating away at your reserves go. So I hope I've answered your question there, because I'm not entirely sure that was the question. Anyway, Terra Interna asks, GTN Coaches Corner. I live in the center of a massive city and is 15 kilometers to the nearest open country. Ooh, shame. If I do a 100+ kilometer brick and spend the last 15 kilometers carefully picking my way back through traffic at way below race pace before starting the run, am I removing most of the benefit of this type of session? Okay, yeah, that's a not ideal brick session. And yes, you are removing some of the benefit, but not all of it. Not all bricks have to be at race pace. You don't have to simulate the race pace. What you're really attempting to do here is change the muscle recruitment from cycling muscles to running muscles. And you can do that at less than race pace, and you can still get the benefit from it. You can do lower intensity bricks. You can also do softer bricks, as in there's not an urgency to get your run shoes on and get out the door immediately after the bike. You can take a bit of time, have something to eat and drink, and then go out and run, and actually we'll still get a lot of the benefit of changing that muscle recruitment for race day when you're doing it rapidly. However, if you do want to do a race pace session where you do want to train that actual high intensity from race pace, maybe I would suggest you do some high intensity efforts on the turbo and then go out running, because yeah, you simply won't be able to simulate that riding into your house the last 15Ks really slowly and then going out and running fast. You will lose some of that benefit from specific race day, especially for shorter races where you're doing a shorter high intensity race and you want to get off and be running really fast really quickly. For longer races, essentially on race day, you can give yourself 2 or 3 kilometers to get into your rhythm without actually costing yourself anything as far as the overall race time goes. Okay, next question is from Tep Plack. Hashtag GTN Coaches Corner. Hi, I managed to get a slot for Challenge Roth this year. Congratulations. Normally, I don't worry too much about a possible DNF due to mechanicals. So far, I've never had any issues. I'm not sure whether this Roth might have already passed, so not specific for him, but I'm going to answer it anyway. But this is one I really want to finish. Other than the usual equipment to fix a flat, do you have any other suggestions for tools or spare parts to bring along on the ride on race day? Okay. Yeah, as I said, Roth has been and gone, so hopefully he didn't have any mechanicals. He made it to the finish line, but many other races remain, so I'm going to answer his question anyway because it's probably relevant to a few of you. You definitely want spares for a puncture, of course. You probably already know that. That means CO2 adapters, CO2s, tire levers, and of course spare tube, maybe even a second spare tube if you are particularly worried. I would also take a small multi-tool. These are available in various sizes and various iterations that have various different combinations of tools, but bike specific ones are the way to go, especially ones that perhaps have a chain breaker on, because if you have a chain breaker on your multi-tool, they will be slightly heavier. But if you have a chain breaker on your multi-tool and you take 1 or 2 of those little quick links, you can pretty much fix any chain malfunction, and that's pretty much all the malfunctions that you could possibly fix on roadside. Anything beyond that, and I'm afraid there's not much you can do anyway. Even a mechanic is not going to be able to help you at that point. So yeah, multi-tool and spare tires, change of tires is the way to go. When it comes to mechanicals on race day, the simple fact is prevention is better than cure. So make sure you get your bike well checked over by a good mechanic in the lead up to the race. And I'm not saying the day before the race. You need to do this about a week before, and you need to go and ride your bike a few times after that mechanic has been. I know the temptation is, oh, the mechanic's checked it, it's all perfect, I don't want to go out and ride now because I might get a puncture or something might go wrong or something might break, and then I have to deal with that in the last few hours before the race. That is not the right way to go about it. Go out and test that bike. If something's going to go wrong, it's going to go wrong in the first 20 or 30 kilometers. You can test that before race day. You can get it fixed and sorted before race day happens. And I hate to say it, but there are many times where you take your bike to a mechanic and just one thing gets overlooked, or something actually gets worse rather than better. Your gears are jumping or something like that. And you can't isolate that until you've actually ridden the bike. So don't get your bike checked and then not ride it, wheel it into transition and race on it. Get your bike checked. Go and have it checked by a professional mechanic, and then go and ride it for an hour or 2 before race day to make sure everything is perfect. And if worse comes to worse, you do get a puncture in that test ride, well, you've got plenty of time to fix it before race day. I hope that helps, and I hope that answers all your questions. Remember, if you have your own questions, in the comment section down below this video, use the hashtag GTN Coaches Corner, or below any of our videos, and we could be answering your question next week. Thanks for watching, and happy training.